Okay, so hi everyone. We're going to start the workshop now. And so this is the Inclusive Higher Education Grant 2024 Request for Proposal Workshop. And then before we begin, I'm just going to start with a quick introduction of the team. And so my name is Cha Her. I work for the Minnesota Office of Higher Education in the Grants and Workforce Initiatives team. I'm one of the program administrator, and I do the competitive grants. And then the Inclusive Higher Education Grant is one of the competitive grants that I oversee. And then I'm going to move it on to Megan to introduce herself.
Morning, everyone. Megan Fitzgibbon with the Office of Higher Education. I'm the manager for Grants and Workforce Initiatives, working with CHA to administer this program. So welcome, everyone. Thank you.
And then we do collaborate with an amazing team at the Inclusive Higher Education Technical Assistance Center, and they're housed at the University of Minnesota's Institute on Community Integration. And so I'm going to let them introduce themselves as well. So go ahead, Mary.
Thank you, Cha. My name is Mary Hoff. I am the director of the Technical Assistance Center, and just glad to be here and to see you all participating in the workshop.
My name is Katie Perry. I use she, her pronouns. Thrilled to see you all, excited for what's happening across the state with Inclusive Higher Ed.
Thank you both. And sorry, I forgot. For folks who joined in later in the session, we are recording this session just because we're going to post it up on our website. And then anyone who comes in later, just put yourself on mute in case there's additional noise in the background. Thank you for that. And so our agenda for today is we're going to just be navigating a couple of websites, go over the Inclusive Higher Education grant, and then review funding availability, eligibility, really dive into the selection criteria and process, and then talk about the proposal content, timeline, and then grantee planning. And then we'll leave some time at the end for questions. But I think at any time, if there's anything that we're discussing and there's a question, feel free to put the question on the chat or unmute yourself and ask. We do have a couple of team members here that can let me know when there's a question in the chat. And so before, at the beginning with this, we're going to just navigate some websites. There's not a lot of website here, but I just want to highlight out the Inclusive Higher Education Grant website. And so for that website, they'll have like information about our RFP. And then I do have the link to our request for proposal here as well. And then I also want to show you all the Inclusive Higher Education Technical Assistance Center, their website as well. And so these are the three main sites we're going to look at today. And so I'm going to exit off the PowerPoint and then show you the sites really quickly. Do you all see a link to the website, or is it still okay, perfect, thank you. And so this first link is the link to the Office of Higher Education site. And so here you'll see the overview of the grants and things. But then the important thing on here is that there is that link to the request for proposal. And this link here shows you all the important dates and important information regarding the request for proposal process and what is included and what's needed for that as well. And so this will be all the important information that you need. On the request for proposal, there will be links to and other websites for you to look at too. So look out for those links. And then there'll be definitions and such on this RFP that's really comprehensive for you all. And so if you once you review everything and there's still there's still questions about that, let us know. Yeah. Yeah, and if you're just coming in and joining, please mute yourself as we are recording this session. And then finally, I just want to show you the website for the Inclusive Higher Education Technical Assistance Center. They have a great website that really showcases, and highlights some students. And then they do have definitions on what is inclusive higher education and really, really cool information about that piece. They have an amazing learning community that they're a part of, that they do like events and webinars throughout the year. And so definitely check out the website for additional information because they do have some tools and resources that are relevant and important to inclusive higher education. And so these are some sites that I wanted to highlight out. And so moving on, we're going to talk about just the grant overview itself. And so the Office of, so the Inclusive Higher Education Grant came about after the 2023 legislative session. And so with this grant, you can look directly on the link when we have it available, just about the statute and what's a little bit more information about that. And so really the purpose of the grant is to help, eligible colleges and universities throughout Minnesota to apply for initial funding to enhance the existing or develop new inclusive higher education pathways for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities, to have the rights and responsibilities, privileges, and benefits and outcomes that results from higher education, including academic growth, career advancement, and improved self-determined living. And so throughout this throughout the PowerPoint, I'm just I'm going to refer the intellectual and developmental disabilities as IDD, but feel free to there's going to be a lot of acronyms that we're going to be, so I'll try to highlight those acronyms too, because it is a mouthful to say a lot of some of those acronyms that we have. But through the legislative name grant, that's how the Office of Higher Education has collaborated with the Institute on Community Integration at the University of Minnesota to create and establish the Technical Assistance Center. Really, then to and then with that is to create access and support for self-sustaining, high quality, inclusive post-secondary education options throughout the state of Minnesota. And so with this collaboration, you might want to know, like, what is the role of the Technical Assistance Center and what is the role of the Office of Higher Education? And so we're just gonna I'm gonna move this over to Mary to discuss a little bit more about just the role of the Technical Assistance Center.
Thank you, Cha. The TA Center, we want to emphasize that it's available to any interested faculty or staff member. Where we have been offering and will continue to offer one-on-one consulting, team meetings, and professional development webinars, as Cha had mentioned. We're happy to share resources and connect you with colleagues from across the state as well as the country. And we are continuing our work to connect with prospective students, families, and educators. And that would be an area that we're prepared to collaborate with faculty and staff to help raise awareness and for student recruitment. As a grantee, we'll work closely with you to collaborate through your planning and offering the Inclusive Higher Education Initiative on your campus. Once grantees are announced, we'll schedule and have a planning session. And that primary goal will be to review the project plan and milestones and identify areas that we may support and assist you. We'll schedule some regular check-in meetings and technical assistance sessions as needed. As Cha had mentioned, we offer learning community events as well as community of practice gatherings, and we welcome and invite you to be a part of those. We'll offer 5 to 6 of them through the academic year. Our TA center is also available to collaborate with the grantees to help them collect and report data during the planning phase, as well as once the initiative is up and going and students are enrolled. As mentioned in the RFP, the TA Center will be completing the independent evaluation for all the grantees. The evaluation will be guided by the Minnesota standards and aligned with the national accreditation standards. Grantees will be expected to participate in the evaluation, collecting and reporting data. The evaluation will include a review of the initiatives, services, and resources that are utilized to support the students' success and outcomes in academics, career development, and self-determined living. In addition, the data that is collected will be summarized and included in the annual report that the Technical Assistance Center is required to do. We submit that to the Office of Higher Ed, as well as the legislative higher education committees. And that annual report will be provided to policymakers with an update on inclusive higher education in Minnesota and will be publicly available. We're here and happy to answer any questions and help you along the way. Thank you, Cha.
And so then here at the Office of Higher Education, our role is to create, release, and manage the request for proposal. And so right now, the request for proposal has been released, and now we're just managing that process. And then as an agency, we determine and announce grant awards. We set up and manage grant contracts. We process all grant reimbursements and requests, and then we do conduct grant monitoring. And like Mayor was saying, we do collaborate a lot with Mayor and her team at the Technical Assistance Center, just about the grant and in general, like anything that has come up. Moving to funding availability. And so we are super excited to say this is our first request for proposal for this grant. There has been a lot of hard work behind the scenes to make this possible. And so the total amount for this year is $750,000. And just to highlight some things is that applicants may apply annually for and receive awards up to $200,000 each year for up to 4 years. And then after that, they can apply annually and receive awards up to $100,000 for a total of 10 years. There is a 25 match requirement for this award, whether it's in kind or monetary. The proposal period started on June 10th, and then it's going to go through the end of July on July 25th. And then once that proposal period ends, after we sign all the grant contracts, the grant period then will start in September, or it will start when the start of the grant, the signed contract is until next year in September. So then the eligibility for the grant. So an eligible applicant is a public or a nonprofit post-secondary institution or a tribal college. There is going to be, there is this link here for folks who want to just make sure they are going to be an eligible applicant. So then once this recording and this PowerPoint is public, you can use this link and review that. Or let us know, and we can let you know too. And then I just want to highlight quickly kind of just like the minimum requirements after you find out like you're an eligible post-secondary institution, then just some of the following items that are important to include, which is the proposal cover sheet, proposal narrative, project budget, letters of letters of support from institution's president or chancellor, and then resumes. We will go through like all of the following items more in detail later in this PowerPoint. And so I just wanted to highlight it here. Another thing to note that there is a competitive priorities for this grant, and that priority is to prioritize awards to applicants that have submitted for or received a comprehensive transition and post-secondary designation, or applicants with documented progress or an intent towards submitting for federal approval. That whole process, we do have links and like information on the actual request for proposal worksheet that's on our website. And so let us know if there's any additional questions about that process, but we do have that outlined in the proposal. And then for any applicants and supporting or partnering organizations, we just want to let you know you can collaborate with them on the content proposals, but the applicants must write and submit proposals. So this might be like the big bulk of the presentation, but just to talk about the selection criteria and the process. And so this selection criteria and process is all laid out in the request for proposal document as well, but I wanted to highlight it here in the workshop. So there is going to be a committee that will review the proposals, and they will utilize and evaluate the proposal based on this 100-point scale that we have. And so I'm going to go through some of the main points that we are going to look for on the request for proposal. And so first, we on the rubric will be the need and significance of the project, and then that will be 10 points. Really, for that piece is to document the need for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities and how the project would meet their needs. Really, how does this fit into the larger framework and mission of the institution? And then really address specific project focus or goals that promotes post-secondary attendance, retention, and success. And then, if applicable, if you already have a program that's running well, let us know or write down like how the existing program has been successful. And then next, it's the quality and the quality of project design, and this is going to be the big bulk of the proposal. It is 40 points, so it's really to look at, what's the goals, objectives, activities, and outcomes that are to be achieved. And we do, and that it is clearly specified and measured and defined on your proposal. And then to share your project timeline and milestones for accomplishing tasks, and to really clearly define that as well. And then to incorporate the Minnesota Inclusive Higher Education Standards into the proposed initiative. So the Minnesota Inclusive Higher Education Standards will be defined on the actual RFP proposal that we have linked to our website. And so you can look at there too. But in short, I did include it on here, but then it's just to review like the academics piece of it, and so really address how the initiative will ensure inclusive access to course across campus, and then on students' program of study, the use of accommodations and modifications and other academic services while maintaining standards of excellence in the classroom. And then the career piece of it is really to address how students with IDDs will gain, relevant job experience through internships and employments both on and off campus. And then the self-determined living is to address how students with IDDs will have the opportunity throughout their time in college to gain maturity, explore their life goals, and become empowered for a self-determined life of their choice. And so that's just briefly a little bit of the Minnesota Inclusive Higher Education Standards that are to be included in the proposed initiative. And continuing with that criteria is to also present a student support plan, which includes supplemental advising, peer support to ensure there's support across campus, and then access to programs and courses, person-centered planning for enrolled students, and then finally to describe intent to develop a plan that includes the approved credential, like leveraging existing university services and systems, a financially accessible post-secondary education offering, and then an alternative admission requirements for students with IDDs to be traditionally enrolled. The next criteria is commitment to equitable services and outcomes, and that's 20 points. This is to show and to demonstrate commitment to expanding enrollment, to include students with IDDs. This is to define inclusion in higher education in general, and to outline like how the broader institution plans for including diversity, equity, and inclusion, and specifically states how individuals with IDDs are addressed in your plan, and really to identify gaps or weaknesses that are in the systems and services to successfully meet the needs of students with IDDs. And then lastly, to demonstrate outreach and enrollment plans that address regional needs and include students with IDDs from all ethnic, cultural, linguistic, and social economic backgrounds. The next criteria is the quality of project evaluation, and this is 5 points. So then the proposed project evaluation plan must include a commitment to participate in an independent evaluation process. And so like this independent evaluation is conducted by an external party. And then the goal of the evaluation is just to ensure that the findings are unbiased, credible, and reliable. And so the quality of budget is that's the next criteria, and that's 15 points. Just demonstrate that your budget is cost effective, appropriate, and is reflective of the project requirements. There's project objectives and outcomes, and then the numbers of eligible students with IDDs that will be served. The 10-year plan that includes student enrollment projections for the sustainability of the initiative. And then that the 10-year plan shows long-term financial commitment to program to really have a self-sustained program. And then also for the budget to show that the 25% matching that is documented, and that if there's any additional resources support that is provided. Quality of personnel, resources, and management is 10 points. And then this one is the last of the criteria. And this one shows like commitment to an inclusive higher education initiative with the letter of approval and signature from the president or chancellor of the institution. And then the letter must affirm commitment to offer enrollment to students with IDDs, obtain the CTP program designation, join the Minnesota Inclusive Higher Education Consortium, adhere to Minnesota Inclusive Higher Education Standards, participate in the independent evaluation requirement, and then provide 25% monetary in-kind or monetary in-kind match for the grant. Provide a hiring plan for fully, to have, full staff and the initiative, and then state any resources that are adequate to meet the project's goals and objectives. And so all of those is the criteria for the selection criteria for the grant. So the selection process, how that will look like. And so then the review committee will submit their evaluation to the agency, and then we will review, and the final decisions will be determined through these following steps. And so first, the proposals are organized based on the competitive priorities, and then after that, the awards are granted based upon competitive priorities. Proposals are again organized based upon proposal evaluations of the 100-point scale, and then awards are granted to applicants with the highest proposed evaluations. Funds are awarded during this step, and the remaining applicants that any remaining applicants after that will not be granted. So after the Office of Higher Education publicly announced grantees, all applicants will receive copies of their evaluation records. And I'm just going to pause for a bit. If there are any questions or any comments about the selection criteria process or anything that we covered so far, please let us know. Otherwise, now we're going to dive into the proposal content. And so like I was saying earlier, the main things to submit would be the proposal cover sheet. And so that's the first part. Because we're not doing our process in our grant portal this year, we will do it a little bit differently. And so we have this proposal cover sheet that I am going to just show really quickly. Okay. And so then this cover sheet is to collect information about the applicants and who is going to be like the main person signing off on things. And so when you get to this link, follow the instructions and then write down the information that's needed here. And so this is the first step. And so you submit that proposal cover sheet and then it gets to us. Okay, and then after that, when you're done with that pieces and your proposal narrative, then you email the following information to the gwi.ohe@state.minnesota.us email. Your email, the proposal narrative, the project budget, any letters of support from the institution leadership, and then any resumes. You'll email all that to this email. And then that will complete your application process. And so the Office of Higher Ed must receive a complete proposal no later than 4:30 p.m. Central Time on July 25th, 2024. And so we just want to say any late or incomplete proposals will not be considered. And all of this information here is also on the RFP that's on our website. So you'll know kind of, okay, once you submit the cover sheet, like what else you need to include to complete the application process. And so then here's the timeline of the review process. And so the RFP has been submitted, has been posted on the website already. And then today is the grant proposal workshop. I wanted to highlight out that we do have a technical questions deadline, which is July 18th. And so any technical questions, regarding like interpreting instructions or preparing for the proposals, you'll email the gwi.ohe email with those questions, and then we'll answer them, and then we'll post them on our website weekly. So if any other folks have the same questions, or they want to double check that first before sending a question to us, it'll all be available on our on the Office of Higher Education website that was shared earlier. And so after that deadline, so after July 18th, we won't be accepting any more technical questions regarding that. And so then if you have any questions, you'll just go into that website and check what some of those questions were. Proposals are due it should be July 25th. And so I'll update that, but July 25th, 2024 at 4:30 is the proposal deadline. After that's done, the review committee begins the review for proposals at the beginning of August. And we hope that toward the end of August, applicants are notified of award decisions. And then the start of September, then the grantees will be publicly announced. We do have a mandatory 2-hour grantee orientation. So please mark that on your calendar. It's September 5th. From 1 to 3 p.m. And so that will be the orientation for all of our grantees. After that orientation, then the grantees will prepare grant documents that are needed, and that are needed for this process. And so that will happen between September and October. And then signing the grant contracts will be as soon as we get those documents, then we can, sign the actual grant contract, and that will happen between September and October later this year. And so I'm going to go into the grantee planning. And so once you're awarded and you are a grantee, like kind of what you need to plan for and what to look out for. So I said earlier, the mandatory orientation is September 5th from 1 to 3 p.m. And so following the award notification, there will be a virtual, so this will all be virtual mandatory 2-hour orientation for the grantee. And so really this orientation is to prepare grantees for the grant administration and for any strategic planning. During this orientation, we'll provide like a Teams link when we get closer to that time. Following that orientation, there will be a required planning sessions that the grantee would need to schedule with the TA center with. And so please schedule that time before October of 2024. And this meeting is to individually meet with the TA center really to discuss your plan more in details. And then also the TA Center or the Minnesota Inclusive Higher Education Center, they're also going to have a conference, their first annual conference. So save the date for September 25th, 2024. And then, or you can also follow them, subscribe to their email updates or check their websites for any updated information about that conference. And then moving on, so then when you're a grantee, there's going to be things that we're going to discuss at the orientation about work plan and budget. So to have all of those included, and then there's any expenditures at that point to discuss and to write down, and then finally the grant contract piece will be the final piece of the grant, of that planning piece. And so I'm going to move on and talk about grant payments. And so grantees, they must submit for reimbursements in February of 2025, July, and then the following year after that, February and July. And then all of these corresponds with the grant reporting. And so our grantees are required to submit narrative reports to the Office of Higher Education. There is a interim narrative report, and then there's final narrative reports for each year. And then we'll provide you with the report of content and the format of the report, so you know what to include in your report. Our grantees with awards of 50,000 or more are required to submit a monitoring report and then also attend a monitoring visit. And so when that time does come, we'll be in contact with you about that piece. Okay, and then maybe I just talked really fast or there wasn't any questions, but now I want to allow time for questions. And just want to highlight that the application deadline is July 25th, and that any technical assistance that is needed, any technical assistance questions that comes up before the deadline, please email us at gwi.ohe, and that the technical questions deadline will be July 18th. And so please let us know if there's any questions or if something doesn't make sense, let us know. We're here and happy to answer.
Say, I have a question. You had indicated that 25% of the funding for our proposals must be in kind or cash. Do you have any sort of exceptions about what would not be included in in-kind calculations? Or would any sort of justification we provided, and as long as it seemed reasonable, would that suffice?
Jacqueline has looked at more matching documents than I have recently, but usually it would be something that would be, you know, program related, reasonable. I mean, if there's some real questionable thing that you're concerned about, you can, you know, email Cha directly and we can think about that specifically. But I think, you know, about any other kind of matching type of processes, whether, except for something that might be covered under indirect in the first place. So, but if there's other funding that's coming from another grant, or if, you know, there's a point person and the grant is only paying for 50% of that salary and the institution's paying for the other 50%, or there's you know, space being made available for classrooms that isn't being charged to the program, something, I don't know. Those are all kind of reasonable things I would think that would make sense in a matching, whether it's in kind or cost. But if there's something specific, just let us know and we can try to work through that. Yeah. There's a question in the chat about a set number of awards, a variety of amounts. Well, first it'll be based on what's requested. We, you know, and then it'll be based on scores and the amount of funding that's available. I think the RFP says we have the ability to award partial awards if we need to, although we don't necessarily want to do that, but we are limited by the amount of funding. So if there's, you know, multiple applications, we will look at, you know, ones that are at the edge and maybe see, you know, based on the scoring that comes in. We definitely will see if there's an opportunity for a partial award, if that would make sense, depending on how much is still available for the funds we have. But we do want to make sure that the funds are going to programs that are able to succeed, you know, at least in that grant year and in the future as well. So, you know, if the grant requested is the full 200,000 and there's only 25,000 available, that's probably not going to happen because it just wouldn't make a lot of sense. The good part is that the grant funds for this program are in what's considered a special revenue fund. So that means that that funding that we may not be able to award in this year isn't going to go away, and it isn't going to go back to the general fund. It's going to be available for the next round and for future rounds if we end up having a little bit of funding left over that could be utilized for future grants if we need them. So the good thing is it's not going to go away. The bad thing is we might have some that we aren't able to award in every year, depending on the amounts that are coming in. But yeah, we won't be looking at, well, generally the decisions are going to be made based on the scoring of the grant proposal. And if we have something available and there's still, and it would make sense, we will reach out to those grantees that are, or those potential grantees that are maybe on the edge based on the scoring, and see if they'd be able to still function and be able to carry out what they expect in their grant, or that they demonstrated in the grant application with a partial award, if that makes sense.
Good. Let us know if there's any more questions. I'll wait for like another minute and I'll stop recording. And then we'll hang out for a little bit if there's additional questions after that as well.
And Cha, I don't remember if you probably looked at it on the timeline, but there is still an opportunity for technical questions to be submitted. I don't remember what the deadline is right now, but so if you think of something after today and you want to submit it, feel free to submit another question, or if there's something more specific to what your institution is considering, feel free to send in those questions as well.
Yeah, the deadline is July 18th. Okay. And so I'm going to stop recording now.